Hello there everyone, uxwbill here once again with a very quick episode of Kitchen Table Electronics Repair featuring the Technics TV FM AM quartz synthesizer stereo receiver model number SA-550. Now I just did a video giving an overview of this stereo receiver and showing some of the most obvious problems with it. I have gone through and corrected many of those problems at this particular point, and I'm going to take the opportunity in this video to show you how some of these things were addressed. First, the simple problem of the subsonic filter, high filter, and loudness controls being pushed in and the stereoplex control not being very far behind. As it turns out, these aren't nearly as bad as I thought they were going to be in order to fix. They weren't actually badly broken at all, because this design allows for the controls to take some abuse and be put back together after it happens. But if you push these even too hard, you will definitely cause them to come undone, or if you have a stereo receiver that's in a box and you drop it on the floor, you will certainly cause them to become undone. These are a very, very simple assembly when you look at them. They're nothing more than a spring around a plastic shaft. You can kind of see the spring there. I'll go ahead and zoom in on it, and hopefully this thing will go ahead and focus. You can see how the spring serves to return the button to its normal resting position. Now when this front panel is in place, these switches back here actually fight the spring to keep the switch in approximately the correct position. But all in all, a very simple design and effective. It solves the problem very nicely and reliably. Of course, they can pop off, as previously mentioned, and that's simply all that happened here. There's a little finger. I'm pointing to it with the screwdriver. You can see it right there that holds each of these in place, and if you push it too hard, you will simply end up pushing these past the finger, and then they will get stuck, and you have to take the front panel off. Now, taking the front panel off of this set is not nearly as bad as I thought it would be at first. When I was looking at the design and how things went together, I'm thinking, how did Matsushita Electric ever envision this to work, you know? And it turns out it's not as bad as it looks. There's more of these little plastic two-piece snap things right here. You go ahead and pop all of those out, and then you remove 4 screws from the top of the set, and I believe another 3 or 4 screws from the bottom of the set, and then you can carefully work the front panel free. Now, things to be careful with would include these little tuning pads, because these are nothing more than a thin printed material stretched over a button. And if you get a little too rambunctious with these, you will tear the thin printed film. I have seen some of these receivers where that sort of a thing has happened. Of course, the other problem was a little more daunting to fix, and I had to think about this for a little bit. All of these switches down here, with the exception of these 3, the subsonic filter, the high cut, and the loudness, were dirty, resulting in the audio almost cutting out completely. Well, what these things are is spring-loaded with a latching tab multi-pole switches. And ordinarily speaking, these are sealed from contamination, though I imagine that they're not a perfect seal, and so over time, with heating and cooling and use and the power flowing over them, oxidation can undoubtedly get in and cause them to stop working. In the times past, I have taken these switches apart with some success, but it's a very delicate thing to do, and I've broken a few of them along the way. I was working on that equalizer, what was it, about a week ago relative to this video, and I actually had one of them go flying apart while I was working on it. I have never seen a really good way of cleaning these switches, so what I did this time was a little bit different. I shone a very strong light on them so that I could see where the moving parts inside the switch were. And then I took my soldering iron and I melted a small hole in the side of the switch, just enough to allow me to put my contact cleaner in there. And I've tested this thing. The effect is dramatic. Those switches now work perfectly and no lasting harm has been done to them. Now, some might express concern because I went ahead and actually melted open the switch. And yeah, I suppose it might allow a little more air or something in there, but those switches were good for 30 years, and provided everything else in this receiver holds up, I think they'll probably be good for another 30 because they're fairly well protected when this thing is all put back together and the top cover is on it once again. If we look over here by the volume slider, you can see more of those fun tube-shaped bulbs that are used in the SA-946 as well. There's another one over here that serves to illuminate the front panel in this set. They clearly used light pipes to accomplish that effect. I was surprised to see just the one light over here. I really would have expected that there might have been 2 or 3, but there definitely aren't. I don't imagine that an LED is going to make a good substitute for that, so I'll have to figure out where I can get some of those bulbs, although for the sake of the SA-946 I believe I will try 2 or 3 LEDs, since everything is in pretty much a straight line and there's no risk of stuff moving around. Now for those of you who take a great deal of fascination with vacuum fluorescent displays, there are definitely some neat ones here. You can see the frequency station tuning display right here. You can see the little IF bandwidth indicator, the narrow, wide, and the 2 arrows as well as the center arrow. You can see the tuning indications. Only 2 of these are used, AM and FM. MW and LW would be used in a European specification model, and then you can see the actual station display. In an interesting departure from most of these receivers that I have, namely, well actually all of them, this one has colons in it, implying that maybe Technics was thinking of designing a clock into this model, but obviously it never happened. I haven't seen too many stereo receivers that have clocks. This 7-segment character here on the end is completely unused in this model. That would be used in European models for FM tuning. Likewise, so too would be the shaped number 5 over here. Those aren't used here. They are used simply for European models. And then there is a little bit of silvery material over here. You might... Now, the light didn't really help it, but you can kind of see the dark spot there. That is what you call a getter. That is used to remove any residual air after the glass has been sealed together and evacuated as much as possible using something like a vacuum pump. The other display down here is also of the vacuum fluorescent type, and it is the power output and stereoplex indicator. If I zoom in on that, you can actually see there is one unused indication in there. Come on, focus. There we go. That's definitely a nifty looking display. You can see how it says stereoplex at the top. You can see the patterned lines that are in between each of the brackets that are used for power output indication. And then at the bottom, you can see something that says space dimension. I don't know if there's any real difference in the space dimension and stereoplex circuits, other than to say that on my SA-1010 it has space dimension. It's illuminated with incandescent bulbs instead of a vacuum fluorescent display such as this, and there's actually a control that lets you choose how much of the effect you would desire to have, where stereoplex is either on or it's completely off. So that's about everything there is to say as concerns this stereo receiver. I might as well go ahead and throw the front panel on it, put all these snaps in place, put everything back together, and see if it still happens to work like it ought to. And for now, that's pretty much all there is to it. Thank you for watching, and feel free to leave a comment if you have one.